All right, welcome back. So now that we're at the halfway point of this first tour, I thought it'd be a good time to talk about something that I haven't seen talked about too much since the off season, and that is the major format, and more so the fact that we haven't seen any changes in the major format, which is a little disappointing, not only for me, but I think a lot of people share this sentiment, and now we've heard that pro players even share this sentiment as well. If you've been watching my channel for a little while now, you may have seen a video I made a few weeks ago before they had announced all the changes that were going to be made for this season. Kind of like a little wish list of things that I was hoping would get changed. Stuff like point distribution being tweaked a little bit, which last season was a little out of whack, but that's to be expected when it's the first time we've had a DPC in this format. Just overall monetary improvement, the fact that there is not as much money in the pool now than there was 5 years ago, even though the game has only grown from a pro scene and a viewership perspective, is pretty ridiculous in my opinion. And then finally, a change to the major format, which has felt very clunky. It's not a format we've seen very much, at least in Dota, and I think for good reason. It has been really heavy on the front end for no real reason. And so today I wanted to talk about it. I want this video to generally just be a discussion. I want to hear your guys' opinions on how maybe you think you could improve the new major format, if we should scrap the idea entirely, what we should do differently, or if you disagree entirely and you think that the current major format is perfect, if you think that maybe just a few minor changes can be made to it, or anything like that. Again, I want this video to be a discussion. I would love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments down below. So starting off in this video, I'm going to be basically going through the current format for the major, talking about exactly how it works, not getting too in depth about it, but just going over how it functions and where the flaws lie, and then talking about some possible changes that I've seen thrown around a little bit by some other people in the community, including some ideas from myself. And again, this is all just personal opinion. If you guys have any other thoughts about any of this stuff, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, so starting off with how the current major format works. This is a upper division in any given region right here. If you finish first place in your region, you are immediately placed into the upper bracket of the main stage of the tournament, meaning you skip right through the wildcard stage and the group stage. You are just now waiting for your opponent in the upper bracket. If you finish second place in your region, you are slotted into the group stage with the other 5 teams from the other 5 regions. For some regions, those being North America and South America, these are the only 2 major slots that you have. For every other region, they have a 3rd additional slot. That is for the wildcard stage, which becomes before the group stage. And then for only Western Europe and China, they have an additional wildcard slot. So they get 4 slots for the major. So those 6 teams coming into the wildcard stage, again, teams coming in from pretty much every single region but the 2 Americas. There's 6 teams in total. They all get slotted into the wildcard stage, where it is a round robin best of 2 format. Every team plays against every other team twice. Whoever comes away with the most wins moves on, those being the top 2 teams of the 6. So if you're in the top 2, you move on to the group stage, and if you're in the bottom 4, you are now eliminated from the tournament. In the group stage now, we have 8 teams, as we have the 6 teams from those 6 regions, plus the 2 wildcard teams. They also play in a round-robin format, best of 2. Again, whoever comes away with the most wins. The top 2 teams with the most wins move into the upper bracket. The following 4 teams get slotted into the lower bracket, where they will wait for their opponent who drops down from the upper bracket, and the bottom 2 teams in the group stage are now going to be eliminated. So heading into the main stage, you already have 6 teams that have been eliminated. Of the 18, you only have 12 teams on the main stage, which is not something we see very often, at least with Dota. I know for TI and previous major formats, we had an additional round in the lower bracket, those being traditionally known as the best of 1s in the lower bracket. But in the current major format, we do not have those. With that, the tournament is now played in a double elimination bracket style, which, if you're not familiar with how it works, I actually have a video that I made before TI talking about just exactly how it works. If you're at all curious, I'll link that in the description down below. But I think for most general Dota fans, the double bracket elimination style should be something that's quite familiar to you. So now, talking about some of the flaws that we've been seeing with this format, now that we've had 2 majors that have been played in this format, it's pretty obvious that this thing is pretty front-ended. The fact that there are teams that can play upwards of 24 matches at least if you're coming in from the wildcard stage before attending the main stage is pretty ridiculous when you think about the fact that some teams haven't even played at all. I know this is something that Insania brought up in his interview after a series against Team Secret, where he talked about when he was asked if he would rather finish first place in his division, which is very likely where his team will end up this tour, and get right into the main stage, or if he would rather finish in a lower seed and have to play through the group stage and then have a chance at finishing in the upper bracket. And he actually said that he would rather go through the group stage, just because of the fact for most tournaments, There is a meta that kind of develops in the group stage. You get a little bit more of a feel of that meta and of your opponents, and you just in general get a little bit more warmed up for the tournament. Whereas when you're sitting in that upper bracket, you're going to be playing against another team that has that warm up that you don't, and you can get off to a slow start, which is something that we saw quite a bit, especially with teams like Alliance. And one team that we saw last season that actually made it through both wildcard stages was Vici Gaming. Vici Gaming made it through both wildcard stages. They even made it to the upper bracket in that first tournament, and they went on a pretty good run. They finished top 4 in that first tournament. So it was one of the 2 tournaments. I could be wrong about whether or not it was the first or second one, but regardless, teams coming in through the wildcard stage have generally had a lot of success. PSG LGD was another team that in the first tour came through the wildcard stage, and they also made it to the upper bracket. They of course were, I believe, top 3 in that tournament. So again, teams that kind of build up this practice. Sure, you may say those teams are very good, which they were, but they also had a lot of momentum behind them as well, and they were also feeling out the meta very well. So they just kind of had a drafting advantage over some other teams that, again, didn't have as many games. So I think that overall is the only real problem with it. The overall double elimination style is not a problem. It's something we've had for a long time. I don't think anyone's really blaming that. I think it's really the front end. The fact that there are essentially 2 group stages before the actual main stage, and some teams don't partake in it whatsoever, I think is the real problem. And so now talking about some possible changes that we can see, again, this is all just personal opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, but here is what I think could be a better alternative. Rather than having a different amount of teams being allowed at the major per region, I think it'd be nice if we had 4 teams per region attending the major for 24 teams in total. I am aware that some regions are not as strong as others, like North America, South America, don't have as much depth as regions like China and Western Europe. However, that shouldn't mean that some of those weaker teams shouldn't have a chance at the major. If they are really a weaker team, then they won't make it through the early parts of the tournament regardless. It'll still be the better teams that are making it far in the tournament. I think the more teams that can be included in the major, the better, as we just want to expand the pro scene as much as possible. And I think expanding it to 4 teams per region would be a good start. Well, with those 24 teams, previously 18 in the current format that are allowed, we obviously wouldn't be able to have wildcard stages and group stage. I think that is where the problem lies. And so rather than that, we would have 4 groups of 6 teams, this being a format that we used to have a while ago. Maybe not with this many teams, but I know old TIs used to have the 4-group format. And in this format, you play basically what the wildcard stage is. Best of 2 round robin series, where you're playing against every other team twice, and whoever comes away with the most wins in your group makes it to the upper bracket. And the second place team in your group also makes it to the upper bracket. Since there are 4 groups, top 2 teams from each one forms your upper bracket. Those are your top 8. Following that, we then have the 3rd and 4th place teams of every single group forming the lower bracket, which means that the 5th and 6th place teams are now eliminated from the group stage. Another alternative to this one, if Valve wants to maintain the fact that there are only 12 teams on the main stage, just maybe because they only want to have the 16-team main stage for TI, they could have it so only the top half of the 6 teams actually make it through that group stage. And the bottom 3 teams are eliminated. The 3rd place team of every single group forms your lower bracket in the same format that they currently do. That's just another alternative to the system that I thought of. And the pros of this, and this is kind of where I wanted to highlight some of the things that I think would be a lot better about this. And the first one, the most important one, is that every single team gets a chance to play some games before the main stage. Of course, if 3 of the 6 teams are being eliminated, the stakes are still quite high, so it's not like these games are getting played and are wasting a lot of time. And every single team gets a chance to feel the meta out, kind of test their own strategies and stuff like that without being at risk of just immediately getting knocked out of the tournament in the first round of the upper bracket, if you know what I mean. Following that, no teams will have played 24 games at least heading into the upper bracket if they're a team coming in from the wildcard stage. That is ignoring that if any team has to play any sort of tiebreakers, which in the last tournament, Team Nigma coming out of the wildcard stage had to play some tiebreakers, so they actually played 25 games heading into the upper bracket, while some teams had 0, which I think is ridiculous, and it kind of ties into my last argument here. Again, something I talked about earlier on, more opportunities for teams to shine. If we include more teams from some more maybe not as deep regions when it comes to skill, we're giving more light to some teams, to some underdogs to really surprise people. And it also sheds some light on some teams that maybe aren't able to perform as well in their region, whether or not that's because they're more figured out by the teams in their region or just because they're really struggling keeping up with the meta in their region, but are better on LAN, which I think in general is what you want to see at TI at the end of the day. You don't necessarily want to see teams that are only able to perform well in their own region. You want to see teams that are able to bring their best game in LAN against the best teams in the world. And so some teams that maybe don't finish top 2 in North America or South America will never really get that chance in the current format. And finally, for this new format that I've brought up, it doesn't require any more time. The wildcard stage and the group stage, I believe, were played in just about 4 combined days before the main stage. And with 4 groups of 6 teams, you can easily get that through. Obviously, you might have some teams playing at the same time. I think they were running dual streams for the majors, which is something you could do with this. It wouldn't require any more time. The time frame would be the same. And again, if you didn't want to have that extra round in the lower bracket, you don't have to have it. You just eliminate the bottom half of every group. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, again, I really want this to be a discussion video. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about it. If you think there should be any changes at all, if you guys agree with me, disagree with me, or have some minor tweaks to my opinions, let me know. Or if you have any cons to my opinions. Again, I only really listed out the pros, but you guys can let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow with another video. Bye.